I was maybe I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. My older brother and I were sitting down with my father. And he looked at us and said something that I've never forgotten. He said, "One day I will king you." And we didn't really understand it then. But what he meant was this, that he had recognized that it was his job to raise us, to train us, and to prepare us so that one day he may be able to yield the throne to us. I should be able to take the throne. Not because I have to. And he's doing that. That's what a father does. And that's what any leader worth following does. And I've carried that with me for a long time. And I think about it a lot these days. Because we're living in a moment where that idea that one generation prepares the next to lead has quietly become profoundly broken. And that's what Law 17 is about. Seize the historical moment. And this is the law of generational myopia. So Robert Greene opens this chapter with a truth that is both simple and devastating. Robert Greene writes, "You were born into a generation that defines who you are more than you can imagine. Your generation wants to separate itself from the previous one and set a new tone for the world. In the process, it forms certain tastes, values, and ways of thinking that you as an individual internalize. As you get older, these generational values and ideas tend to close you off from other points of view, constraining your mind. And that closing off is the myopia. Another way of saying it's like tunnel vision, where you block out all the information from one specific thing. And is that blindness that Greene is naming. Every generation carries the world it grew up in as a lens over its eyes. And the danger is not that you are seeing the world through your generational lens. The danger comes when you forget that you are wearing your generation's lens. That you mistake your generation's reality for the only reality. That you hold on to the controls of a world that has already moved on and call it wisdom. History has seen this pattern repeat itself over and over again. And one of the clearest examples sits at the end of the 18th century in the Palace of Versailles, when a young king who never stood a chance and an older world that refused to let it go. And that is King Louis XVI. In 1774, King Louis XVI inherited the throne of France at the age of 20 years old. The French people were hopeful. He was young. He and Marie Antoinette represented something new, a fresh generation taking hold of a country that had gone restless under the old one. But King Louis was not ready. And the world around him was shifting in ways that he could not fully see or could not fully accept. The middle class was growing and they wanted more power and representation. The peasantry was exhausted and hungering. And a new cultural shift was rising. Something looser and more emotional and more honest than the monarchy of old. The young people of France were done with this elaborate formality, and they wanted to feel something real. King Louis could sense it. He was not a stupid man. He could feel that, but he kept reaching back to the old frameworks, the old rules, the old way of managing a kingdom. He had tried to govern France in the way that his grandfather did. But his grandfather's France no longer existed. By the time the revolution came, it wasn't just a political event. It was a generation that had waited long enough to finally say that we are done waiting. And King Louis lost his head not because he was cruel. He lost his head because he was blind to the historical moment that he was living in, blind to the fact that the world had already moved on without his permission. And that leads us to the conversation we need to have. And a lot of this will be my personal opinion. But take this from whatever standpoint you are right now. And I want to be honest with you for a minute. And I want you to stay with me here, because this is not about anger. It's about clarity. And right now, us in the United States particularly, are living through our own version of this. Where the boomers, which is the largest and most economically powerful generation in human history, has held on to the power past their time. They have held on to political power past the point of transition. They've held on to corporate leadership past the point of yield. They have built systems that have served their present comfort at the cost of their children's future. And as a result, Generation X never got the chance to fully step into its role. The millennials were handed a world where the foundation was so dried up from the older generations that it had begun to crack. And Gen Z is inheriting the consequences of the decisions that they had no voice in making. Eventually, the boomers are going to pass. And the rest of us are going to deal with what they left. Thanks, Grandpa. And I don't say that with hatred. Honestly, I say that with a lot of grief. Because I think that most of them did not fully understand what they were doing. Generational myopia is not malicious. It's human. You live in the world that you know. You protect what you have. You forget that the people behind you need room to grow. But the cost of that forgetting is real. And we are all paying for it. Now, if you have opinions on the boomers versus Gen X and Gen Z, there are stats, there are figures, all of that is there. I'm going to let you look that up yourself to form your own opinion. But I think we're in some real trouble. I think we're in some real trouble politically, financially. The economy's in huge trouble. And this wealth transfer that was supposed to happen never happened. And we're going to pay for that in some big ways. But I don't want to focus so much on the microcosm that is the United States. Because this happens at every level all the way down. We're human beings. And part of being human means at some point our stories have to come to an end. At some point you are going to have to face death. And you only have a certain amount of time with what you have now. And I'm not going to get into that too much because that's what Law 18 is all about. But you have to understand where you are in the world is the result of the generations before you laying down the foundation for you to grow. Assuming they didn't choke you out because they didn't step down in time. I would not be who I am if it had not been for my mother and father. And them for their mother and fathers before them. The generations and generations back. So to them, there is a level of credit that must be done. And we wouldn't be where we are without them. That does mean good and that does mean bad. And we are approaching the age of the most influence and responsibility. In an ideal world, your prime corporate and political years should be somewhere between 40 and 60. Being a millennial, the oldest of us now are now 41. It is our time to start stepping into those roles. And at that, ironically, those are the roles that Generation X never even got a chance to be in because the boomers never stepped down. And to that I say, life begins when you start taking responsibility. And we have been put in a situation where we have not been handed the responsibility that we were entitled to take. So, take it. They're not going to hand it to you. Take it. They're not going to give up the political office. Take the political office. If it's that comes down to it, go vote. If it means you can't get the company that is full of the blue hairs and boomers, go build your own. If that means you can't have the family, go find a way to build your own family, even if it just means finding people around you who have kids or they're just good friends. You have to build your communities. Leadership is the manifestation of an ideal future in the present. We, as leaders, are the ones who get to drive towards that ideal future. And we have to, because our time is now. It's now. We have to do it. Take the responsibility. And as we take the responsibility, we must realize that we are not just doing it for ourselves and our comfort. That is selfish, and selfishness is really the root of most evils. And it's foolish to think that in light of death that we're somehow going to be able to cheat history by holding on to power for forever, as the boomers did. If you have a problem with me saying that, let's look at the average age of the last 2 presidents. It is foolish, and it is a fool's errand to try to cheat death, though many people are trying. There comes a day when you will be older, when you will be slower, when you don't have the energy or the health, and you are to have generations so that you can pass it on. So that the grand symphony of humanity doesn't dwell with the age of one selfish generation. It's time for us to step up. It's time for us to take responsibility. And in doing so, lead in a manner that says, I will do the best I have with right now in the positions I've been discharged to fill. Take the next generation and train them so that when their time comes, they are ready, so that our society remains constant and strong across generations, as opposed to thinking only of ourselves at the cost of our posterity. And unfortunately, in our society, we have done the exact opposite. By that I do mean the boomers. That was a lot. We are here because of the work of the generations that have gone before us. We stand here today prepared to take responsibility and to shape the world into what we believe that it needs to be. And we have the responsibility of ensuring that the generations behind us are prepared to lead when we become old and feeble and eventually pass. It is the circle of life. And you can't hold it for forever. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. We'll get into this more again in Law 18, which is all about accepting your death. But in light of life, we have to start thinking about the world outside of our singular entity that is ourselves. It takes all of us. So, let's get into the application. First, stop waiting for permission. If the generation ahead of you, in this case, as a millennial, that'd be Generation X and the boomers, has not yielded the space you need, make your own. You don't have to be violent. Don't be bitter. I will never condone violence or whatever it is that means picking off old people. I do not condone that. But be decisive, be persistent, and choose what you need to do and do it with all you have. Your generation has a voice. Your generation has values, and your generation has a vision for what the world should look like. And the world needs that voice contributing now. Not when someone decides that you've earned the right to speak or they're too incapacitated by age to fight you. It's your time. Take it. Take responsibility. Now, when it's handed to you, take it now. Second, know what your generation stands for. And this is Greene's point. It's more than a generational shift. It is the ones that thrive in any era are the ones who understand the spirit of their time and move with it. What does your generation hunger for? What are the values that define you? Authenticity, community, purpose over profit, belonging that is earned, not manufactured. These are all soft ideas, and those are market forces. And if you run a gym, and this is not just any business, or really it is any business. So if you're running a gym or any business and you are not speaking about your values, you are speaking to a world that is already fading. Understand that the boomers were very much concerned with money because they grew up in the most economically prosperous time, again, in human history. And they didn't give any money to any other of their generations. So Gen Z, Gen Alpha don't even know what money is. Those are the generations who are concerned exclusively about bettering the world, social justice, humanity, etc. Because they don't have the money that the boomers all took. And it looks like the money the boomers are going to take is going to go into robotics or wars or graveyards. I don't know. Take your responsibility. Third, and this is probably the most important in my opinion, because of what my dad had told me. And this applies at every level, the very top of societies, corporations, cities, all of that. All the way down to the CrossFit gym, to the owner and to the coach, to the leader of every kind. The question is not just how you build something great. The question is, who am I preparing to carry this after I'm gone? And who am I training so that one day I can king them? And that's the great symphony of humanity. Always promote the next. You exist in a spectrum of time. From the ancient of ancients to that which is just beginning, you exist in that song. Listen, you're part of the symphony, right? That you're not playing a tambourine solo. We always have to promote the next generation. And when we stop promoting that generation, when we choose to live only for ourselves and to hold on to what we have without preparing our posterity to carry it forward, we do so at our peril. Every time, without exception. History has never shown us a different outcome. So, much like the French king Louis XVI, he's not a villain. He was a man who lived inside the wrong historical moment and tried to govern today's age with yesterday's values. And when the landscape of the political theater changed, he didn't change with it. And the tragedy is not that he lost. The tragedy is that he never fully understood what was being asked of him. We just need to make room. We need to prepare the next generation. We need to think in the elevated long-term thinking of the world so that we can prepare ourselves and our posterity for a long future. You're a song, but you're not a solo. So we have to care about each other. And someday we have to king the next generation. My father understood that. And I'm still learning how to live it. But we will get there. By hell or high water, by choice or by coercion. We will have to pass this world on to our children. So if this one landed for you, share it. Not because of the numbers, because something or someone in your life needs a message like this. The next one, we're getting into death, because that's really where this law should finish. And we'll see you in Law 18. I'm Colin Charles. This is Enoch Marketing. And we'll see you next time.